For me, it started with the question, why are we the way that we are? Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix, and welcome to my channel. I'm super stoked to incorporate this new episode in my Phoenix Discovers the Universe series. I'm super excited. I would like to think about the many factors and facets of behavior, specifically human behavior. And I'd like to do that by talking a little bit about the book Behave by Robert Sapolsky, which inspired some of my thinking. Now, I would say that I have wondered for a long time why people are the way that they are. Why are people violent? Why are people hateful? Why do people lack compassion? Why are people so abrasive and abrupt? And I realized by reading this book by Sapolsky, who often talks a lot about the science of behavior, utilizing psychology and sociology, history, anthropology, and many other fields, especially with science and with neurobiology and various things that we've learned. But I was trying to figure that out. Why are people this way? And I realized by reading this book that now I have a way of thinking about it, because this book maps on to some of what I have observed myself. And so there's a lot to talk about. And I want to acknowledge that I, for a long time, have personalized the very abrasive behaviors that I see all around me from people that are still a part of my community, and how it makes it very complicated trying to get by in a world that is so complicated, in a world that is so difficult to understand. Now, there's a lot of ways that I can dive into this, and I think I wanted to start by isolating one of the core principles of this book, which is that of dominance and hierarchy. And so the reason why I bring it up is because humans need to organize ourselves around a hierarchy. This is how we get things done. This is how we deal with life. This is how we coordinate societies and organizations and corporations. And I'll be honest, I hate hierarchy. I don't like the fact that I have to listen to someone tell me what to do. I don't like the fact that I can't control the ideas that influence society because of the ideas that are peddled by various institutions and different media. But I realized, why personalize it? This is seemingly the way that we structure ourselves, and is evidenced by the interaction of different types of monkeys who organize themselves on a hierarchy as well. And so Sapolsky talks about how we're a part of multiple hierarchies. And all of this is super interesting to me because I realize that I can push against the system, and I don't even have like a moral way of looking at it, because I guess I tend to be more, for lack of a better word, left-wing in my thinking, because I'm more open to equality and egalitarianism. But aside from that point, it makes me realize that there's a lot more to the way that society works. There's a lot more to the way that people think and the way that society has to organize itself. And so I realized, why personalize it? Why worry about the fact that hierarchies are ingrained in human behavior and in human societies? And I can understand both sides of it. I get why I would get frustrated experiencing that world where I feel like I'm being told what to do and I can't have my own freedoms. But also looking at it in terms of the fact that, yeah, how else are we supposed to organize ourselves? And that leads to the next point that I want to mention, which is related to groups. There is, of course, in sociology, the analysis between in-groups and out-groups. In-groups of which are the group that you're a part of, and out-groups are the groups that you don't like. And so I don't want to delve too deep into kind of the way that the groups are structured, because it's a very complicated, politically charged question. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that with this piece of what Sapolsky is talking about, again, I realize I shouldn't personalize human behavior and I shouldn't personalize human society, because we are always going to have outgroups. This makes sense. we feel so much more closer to our kin and our close friends, to our community even. And we see those people as a part of our group, while basically everyone else is an out-group. And if you think about it, how else are humans going to evolve except to be tribal? How is it that we can do anything but not organize ourselves in groups because we want to belong and we want to be a part of something, even if that means being opposed to other groups, which we do all the time? And I struggle with it because I would have liked there to be less chaos, that out-groups and in-group conflict, that out-group and in-group conflict causes. But at the same time, it's like understanding on a deeper level that humans just aren't necessarily going to get along because they have vastly different experiences, a vastly different worldview, they have vastly different beliefs, and it's like no wonder it's so hard for people to get along. And of course, this isn't the only aspect of it. People, as Sapolsky talks about, are capable of some of the best and worst behaviors, and indeed we are. So there are the worst behaviors that we take a part in. But there's also the best behaviors. And so Sapolsky talks about how we can find a common ground through the sacred, through sacred symbols, through sacredness in general, the way that we communicate with each other. And we can also find very intelligent people who do go against the grain in very trying times and who do their best to help people and save people and be there in a very real and engaging way, an engaged way. And it makes it to where, like, you really have to think about it. Because what I've realized is that it is both. And I think for a long time I focused too much on the negative aspects of human behavior, which I think is easy to do with how out-groups function and how in-groups and out-groups function, that makes us to where we feel opposed to people that are different from us. But the other side of that is people figure things out. There's a really good example that Sapolsky uses, which is related to the out-groups of people at war. And so he uses examples in World War I where the soldiers were actually making truces because they realized that they were not going to do what they were told to do because of all of the negative impacts, because who really wants war? And I thought it was interesting because this is the other side of it, is that people can be so incredibly brave. People can live in a world where they are altruistic, and where even if, as Sapolsky says, it is very much self-interest and self-interested whenever we are generous to others and we are altruistic, it is also something that leads to good outcomes for society as a whole. Because we need that bravery. We need the bravery and courage to be modeled. And so the fact that we can put ourselves in dangerous situations and that we can put ourselves in places where we might not normally feel as though we could thrive, but nonetheless try to do the right thing, this is the whole reality that Sapolsky is getting at. And so I keep thinking about it because he talks a lot about the brain states and the neurobiology that goes behind kind of how the brain and body and bodies work. And I'll be honest, it was difficult to try to understand some of the terms, but there is a lot that can be said about it. And I would just say, with my own perspective of what I learned from the neurobiology and chemistry of what's going on, is that there are biological reasons why people are the way that they are. There's this really interesting idea that I've been thinking about lately with very big consequences, which is the way that the very first few years of our lives impact so much of where we end up as adults and how we think and what we become, who we become. And I think it's important to acknowledge this piece because we forget that we're wired by our experiences growing up. And so Sapolsky does a good job describing that point, which is that basically in order for us to understand why people are the way that they are, it's to understand their childhood, and it's to understand that all of that wired a person's biology to be a certain way. And that often leads to a struggle where Sapolsky is saying that the best thing that a child needs is to know that they're wanted and they're loved by their parents. And so the interesting thing that Sapolsky talks about, again on this kind of continuum of the best and worst behaviors, is that there is a situation where many people, in circumstances where many people are very much close to their kin and they're very much loving. But then, of course, because we can also do things that are not good, we realize that people can also be very cruel to their kin and can betray their kin. He uses an example of where Stalin actually disowned a revolutionary person who sacrificed his life, and this individual thought his family, his kin, wasn't important to him, and that what was more important was the state. And even Stalin, of all people, said that that was horrible and that that was a waste and that it was bad. And so there's a lot to unpack here, for me at least, because it's a very big book, about 700 pages, and it really makes you think. And I guess what I realized is something I've already said that I think is important here, is the fact that I do not want to personalize these various things that I have personalized. I don't want to look at things in terms of my own biases and my own views of what I think the world is supposed to be. And granted, it took 35 years to be able to discover this book and to be able to understand it and be able to see how it maps onto my experience. But there is a way in which so much of what I've experienced has been so discouraging and so frustrating that I just wanted to find the answers. I wanted to disconnect and detach from the negative feelings that I experience because of the way that other people are. And I think all of this is important to consider. And it's helped me realize that I don't need to personalize the way that people are. That my experience is validated, but also the fact that understanding that societies will organize themselves in groups and that people will cohere in that way. But I just feel as though it's hard nonetheless, because like Sapolsky says, being scientific doesn't have to come at the cost of compassion. And I definitely identify with this because this is an explanation of why humans are the way that they are, why there's such a spectrum across bad behaviors and good behaviors. But it seems to me as though one of the most important pieces to acknowledge is that there is that huge potential for good. There is that huge potential to cultivate your morality and to care for people, to be altruistic and compassionate, and to really bring out the best behaviors. And I feel like that's what gives me a lot of hope, which is realizing that is there and that we can do better. That's the thing. We are very malleable and flexible as individuals. The brain is just so flexible with neuroplasticity that it makes it to where I believe that we are able to see the bigger picture and be able to change the lives of those around us and change our own lives by being open. So yeah, I'm Phoenix. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode in my series. There's definitely a lot more that I could communicate, and so I will definitely be thinking about it. But I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you. Goodbye.